У своїй сторінці «Stay Ukrainian, my friends» Рон Когут поговорить з провідником опозиції канадського парламенту Ендрю Шір про справи, які стосуються української громади в Канаді. Голова консервативної партії Канади Ендрю Шір відвідав Український культурний центр на Еванс-Авеню і зустрівся там з представниками етнічних громад Канади.
Sponsored by Ukrainian Credit Union. Believe it or not, it's me, Ron Cahoot, with
Stay Ukrainian, my friends!
Stay Ukrainian, my friends.
The name of the gentleman is Andrew Scheer, the leader of the Federal Progressive Conservative Party. Mr. Scheer, there's an election coming up next year. You running?
Absolutely.
Or is it too early to say?
I am running.
You're going to run, huh?
I'm running.
Going to win?
Going to win.
So you're going to be. So I'm actually talking with the future Prime Minister of Canada.
Here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm honored. This is
Well,
cool.
it's up to Canadians, and I'm going to be certainly doing everything I can to earn their trust and their
Yeah, you might want to get out there and talk to some of them. I don't know. It's
Exactly,
Just,
yeah.
It's well, we wish you the best in that. We are sitting at the Ukrainian National Federation. Our questions are going to be sort of geared to that area. With the second coming of the Soviet Union, or we call it Soviet Union 2, those pesky guys that are annexing Crimea and Donbass and all of this stuff, what's your view on government international support for these territorial rights for Ukraine?
I will continue as conservative leader the very strong principled opposition to Russian aggression that was started under former Prime Minister Harper. I'm actually honored to be one of the Canadian officials who is banned from Russia.
Congratulations,
thank you very much. I wear that as a badge of honor. That when I was Speaker of the House of Commons, the House of Commons issued various motions and statements, and we made certain decisions that angered the Putin regime.
Oh, gee.
And so I don't feel terrible about that at all, and I wear my being banned from Russia as a huge badge of honor. I've got a lot of Ukrainians in my riding. The Ukrainian,
Well, you're Regina, right?
Regina, Capella, a lot of rural areas. The contribution to Saskatchewan's history and culture by the Ukrainian people is profound and it's very rich, and so I've always been honored to have that. Specifically, we believe that this government could be doing more to signal its support for Ukraine and the integrity of Ukraine's border, and we think that we have been calling on the Prime Minister to be that leading voice in the international community to stand up to Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, it's. I had an interview with Paul Grod. Do you know Paul Grod?
I do, yes.
He's on that list too.
Yes, he is.
And we were talking about his relationship with Prime Minister Trudeau, as opposed to he had Stephen Harper on his speed dial. I mean, it was, they would fly to Ukraine, and it just seemed that, to me, who was not particularly a political animal, it just seemed that there was a lot more attention being paid to it with Stephen Harper than there is now. He sort of said it as much.
Yeah. I think not only was there more attention, but there was more resolve.
Yeah.
I think the problem that we have with this Liberal government is that they've fallen back into those old patterns of trying to appease different factions within the UN or the international community, and they don't want to sound too assertive, and so they're receding a little bit on some of these issues, whereas conservatives have always spoken very plainly. You'll remember the famous exchange where Putin saw former Prime Minister Harper at an international event, and Harper just said, get out of Crimea, get out of Ukraine, and when Putin denied he was there, he said, well, this is why we can't talk to you, because you're just not telling the truth. Our party has recognized that the Putin regime, the Russian government, is not interested in the same goals as the rest of the Western liberal democracies are, and that is, peace and security and mutual respect. So, yes, a conservative government would not only take practical steps, but we would give it the attention it deserves and speak with that forthrightness and maintain that resolve.
Well, that leads me to the next question. A few weeks ago here, we had an appreciation night for the Canadian military, and Lieutenant General Paul Winnick said that he's not on that list and he would be honored to be on that list, and we were talking about two things, which is my next two questions. The first one was this cache of military weapons that's not being used, and to send them to Ukraine. Why are they not being sent? Does it mean if we send the weapons that we're part of the war?
We believe very firmly in, and our Shadow Minister for Defense, James Bazan, who's very well known in the
Yes.
Ukrainian community, has spent a lot of time all over Canada, especially here in the GTA, developing those ties. He made the announcement just a short while ago that a Conservative government would absolutely allocate those resources to Ukraine. We believe it's practical. It makes sense that these resources
they're not being used.
They're gathering dust in a warehouse, and this is the type of thing where if all a country does is speak but takes no action, are we really doing everything we can to help our allies in Ukraine? So we believe very firmly that the government should do this. Now, the question as to why it's not being done, that is a great question. We've asked that question in the House of Commons. Unfortunately, we don't get answers. It's one of the most frustrating parts of the job about being Leader of the Opposition is when the government just responds with their talking points and doesn't even address the question. I don't know. Perhaps there's some kind of issue within the department where they're getting bad advice from officials. I don't know. But we're going to keep up the pressure because we think it makes sense, and we think it could actually be a tangible thing that improves the prospect of peace in the region. And peace, not the Russian definition of peace, which is, they win, everybody else goes home, but peace and the integrity of Ukraine's borders.
Which brings me to the next one, Project Unifier. It was a big issue here too. We spoke of it, and there were videos, and it sounds to me like it's more of a Harper thing than a Trudeau thing. Project Unifier sounds like it was started then. It's great help to Ukraine. What's you're going to obviously continue with something like that. I mean, that's.
When you look back and see the practical ways that the Conservative government supported Ukraine with materials, with CF-18s, by deploying hardware assets in the Navy into the region, it is substantial. We've also called on the government to lead the charge on developing a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. We believe that fits in with Canada's national interest. We've got the Canadian government right now pursuing a mission in Mali without any clearly defined role or objective or benefit to the Canadian national interest. We believe that Ukraine provides all those things, a practical way that we can help our ally, and that it would fit in very strongly with that. So we would continue that. Not only would we continue that as government, but in opposition, we believe very firmly that the only reason why anything has been maintained or continued by this Liberal government is because of the intense pressure we've put on them. We've held their fire in question period and throughout the session, not letting them give an inch. And when they talk about any type of appeasement or normalizing relationships with the Russian government, we pounce on them because we know that if we waited till we were to get back into government to improve these types of things, we'd have to undo a lot of the damage by the Liberal government. So we're holding their feet to the fire right now.
Yeah, that's a job in of itself, isn't it?
Yeah, on many issues. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can, with all my heart, believe what you're saying because of what the Progressive Conservative Party has done with Ukraine before, and you continue. I guess it's a matter now of, well, Trudeau's certainly not going to stop Project Unifier because that would be really dumb. Not that not that he hasn't done. It's surprising. It's probably one of the few costumes in the world that he hasn't dressed up in yet. But I'm sorry. He. What about an ethnic media fund? Supporting ethnic media. What's the federal? What's your?
Yeah.
Want to give us some money? I guess that's the question.
Look. Let me say a few things. I recognize the very important role that ethnic media plays in all throughout Canada. And one of the things I think is fantastic about our culture and our society here is the way that the ethnic media have set up a valuable and an essential link between what's going on in public policy and current affairs and communities here that may not have access to programming in their own language. So I think it's incredibly important. As conservatives, we believe in that kind of grassroots approach to these types of things. We're going to have our policy convention in Halifax this summer, and we know that a lot of delegates are going to be coming from places like Mississauga, Etobicoke, Brampton, Scarborough, and they're going to be wanting to talk about how a government can create a framework that supports that. We think it's good for competition to have ethnic media. Some of the mainstream traditional media get challenged when they don't cover things, or when they do cover things. Sometimes it's the ethnic media that actually force some stories along. So we think it's good. It's good for all media in Canada to have that kind of competition. How we do it, that's what we'll be deciding in Halifax, because as a conservative government, we don't want to just start making more and more promises with taxpayers' money, but perhaps there's ways that it can be done, whether it's through regulations or through other types of programming, some of the multicultural programming that already exists being purposed. So I don't want to define it too much until we have our policy convention, and I'll be happy to come back and explain how we would be addressing it.
Mm-hmm. Project Unifier, our soldiers go there, our military, and train them. Not only train them how to be better soldiers, but train the trainers. Mm-hmm. And it seems that many of these soldiers who are non-Ukrainian really want to go. They love it there. And those that go, all of a sudden they start claiming Ukrainian roots, So we're doing this. There's the issue of the weapons. There's the issue of the medical help and the aid that we give to Ukraine on an ongoing basis. This organization in particular, GTA people and Canadians in particular, I think that we have a better grasp of what's going on than our neighbors to the south. I just do. Would there ever be a time when we would fight with them, or is that a United Nations thing, or does that where it would have to come from?
Well, I think in this particular context, I think it would be more a NATO thing than a United Nations thing. Right. Depending on the dynamic. Obviously we want to avoid that type of thing. As you mentioned, Project Unifier is a practical, beneficial thing that is increasing the capacity and the expertise of the Ukrainian military. It's also good for Canadian Armed Forces to get experience abroad and all the benefits that come with interacting with other countries' militaries. So it's good for both countries. Obviously, the goal is to scale down Russia's aggression. We're all hoping for that. We're all working towards that. But at the end of the day, we need to send those signals to our allies that these. Our friendship means more than just giving nice words and greetings, and that we're going to be there in a substantial way. That's why I think it's a great first step to call on the government to provide those military assets, those weapons that are in a warehouse. Put them to good use by giving them to people who are literally fighting for their country. Could
that be misconstrued by the Russians as an act of aggression by Canada?
At the end of the day, if you're stacking up aggression on this, it
is the pot calling the kettle black.
It absolutely is, and Russia has played roles in other areas, and so I'm not prepared to let our policy decisions be dictated by someone.
Good for you. Yeah. Good for you. Just like Harper. I can't talk to you because you're an idiot. Basically, he said that. And it was funny. I was reading on Facebook a funny comment by Justin Trudeau when Trump called him an a-hole, right? And he says, how do you feel about that? And he says, well, I'd have to quote my father. He says, who was called the same thing by President Richard Nixon, and his answer was, I've been called way worse by a lot better people. And it's time to just, with these guys, it's time to just, fight fire with fire. And I don't necessarily mean aggressively militarily, but tell the guy that you're a liar.
I think calling truth to power is important, and speaking truth to power, and when you just call it like it is, and sometimes the officials in foreign affairs and the people at the UN, they like to craft these very diplomatic statements with lots of nuance and trying to be very polite about some things. I think sometimes you have to take those pieces of paper, and shred them up and throw them away, and just sit down and say, you are in Crimea illegally. You are breaking international rules and convention, and we will not tolerate. And we will, as a body of freedom-loving peoples, different countries, we're going to do everything we can to get you out of there. And I think when you sit across the table with someone like Putin, that's the best way to handle him, because he has his ulterior motives, he has his strategic agenda. And I'll tell you, he's not worried about the diplomatic niceties.
Oh, hell no, he's like a bull in a china shop. I mean,
so we shouldn't be either. Now, that doesn't mean we act recklessly, and that doesn't mean that we react without cooperation with our allies and without a well thought out game plan. But I think it starts with, as I said at the beginning, that resolve, that standing tall, that backbone, that we just are unwavering in our position on these things.
It'd sure come as a surprise. They'd never see it coming, would they? Not from Canada. Somebody once said that, a United States comic once said that, you guys could invade us and win. Nobody'd see it coming. We don't tend to be an aggressive.
We're not generally, and I think that one of the geniuses of Canada is that we are polite. We are a people in a country that do try to find compromises and accommodations. But when pushed, when we are asked to compromise on core principles, we just say no, we won't. We'll be very accommodating, but you cannot ask us to ignore our friends or agree to something that we know to be illegal. There are lines that we don't cross as a country, and that has been what has made Canada so unique throughout the course of our history. When we need to answer the call, whether it's World War I or II or other conflicts around the world, whether it's in Serbia or in Afghanistan, that when we see evil, when we see wrongdoing, we answer the call.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I hope to speak with you in the future, and I certainly hope to speak with you when I can refer to you as Mr. Prime Minister, which, and when that happens, not if, when that happens, push away.
All right.
Just push away, and you won't have a Ukrainian that won't be on your side. We'll even send you money for lunch. And it's nice. It's nice to see, and it's heartwarming to see someone that's got that kind of passion that you do, and we're a year and a bit away from the election, and you have that passion already, as you did. And again, congratulations on not being able to go to Russia. I think I can, and I don't want to. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great being on the show.
Stay Ukrainian, my friends. Stay
Sponsored by Ukrainian Credit Union. Believe it or not, it's me, Ron Cahoot, with
Stay Ukrainian, my friends.
Stay Ukrainian, my friends. Still needs an accordion.